You've probably imagined growth as a straight line going up. Post consistently, improve a little every week, and the numbers should follow. Followers, revenue, opportunities, all climbing steadily if you just keep doing the work. And then reality doesn't match that picture. You have weeks where nothing moves, months where it feels like you're going backward, and then, out of nowhere, a jump that doesn't seem connected to anything you just did. If you felt confused by that pattern, or worse, discouraged by it, I want to offer you a different way to see it. Growth was never a straight line. It just gets sold to us that way. Today, I want to show you what growth actually looks like, so you stop measuring yourself against a shape that was never real. We expect linear growth because it's the easiest story to tell and the easiest one to sell. Post daily for 90 days and watch your following grow. Follow this framework and see consistent month-over-month results. These narratives are everywhere because they're simple, motivating, and easy to package. But they're not how growth actually works for almost anyone. They describe an average smoothed out after the fact, not the lived experience of building something in real time. When your own experience doesn't match that smooth line, it's easy to assume you're doing something wrong, that the strategy is broken, or that you're not talented enough, or not consistent enough. But most of the time, you're not failing the process. You're just comparing your real, lumpy experience to a story that was never true for anyone in the first place. Real growth looks like a staircase, not a slope. Long, flat stretches where nothing visible seems to be happening, followed by a sudden step up, seemingly out of nowhere. But that step doesn't come out of nowhere. It comes from everything that happened during the flat part. The flat stretch is where the real work is happening beneath the surface. You're refining your message. You're building trust with the people already watching. You're getting slightly better at your craft in ways too small to notice day to day. None of that shows up in the numbers yet, but it's accumulating. And at some point, it reaches a threshold, and the outside world suddenly sees what's been building the whole time. The mistake is judging the flat stretch as if it's the whole story. It's not the whole story. It's the necessary part right before the story changes. The flat stretch is hard because it gives you no feedback, no clear signal that what you're doing is working. And without feedback, the mind tends to fill in the silence with doubt. You start wondering if you've plateaued for good, if the strategy stopped working, if everyone else is moving forward while you're stuck. This is usually the exact point where people quit, right before the step up, because they couldn't see it coming and had no proof it was close. It's also the point where people make reactive changes. They abandon their message, their format, their whole approach, not because it was wrong, but because they ran out of patience waiting for proof it was right. Understanding that flat stretches are normal, not a sign of failure, is what allows you to keep going long enough to reach the next step. Here's what's actually happening underneath that flat line. Compounding. Compounding is quiet by nature. Each individual piece of content, each conversation, each small improvement looks insignificant on its own, but they're stacking. And stacked things don't grow in a straight line. They grow slowly, then suddenly. This is true in almost every domain that involves trust. Trust doesn't build in equal increments. It builds invisibly for a long time and then crosses a threshold where someone finally feels confident enough to follow you, hire you, or buy from you. The step up you eventually see isn't a lucky break. It's the visible result of compounding that had been happening the entire time you couldn't see it. Which means the flat stretch isn't wasted time. It's the time when the foundation for the next step is actually being built. This is also why growth often feels disconnected from your actions. You do something today, and the result shows up weeks or months later, attached to something that looks completely unrelated. A post you almost didn't publish ends up being the one that gets shared. A conversation you had months ago turns into a client now. A piece of content you made early on resurfaces and reaches someone at exactly the right time. Growth has a delay built into it. The cause and the effect rarely arrive together. This is why it's so easy to misjudge your own progress in the moment. You're evaluating today's effort against today's results, when the real relationship is between today's effort and results that haven't arrived yet. If you only trust what you can measure immediately, you'll keep abandoning things right before they were about to work. So, how do you keep going through the flat stretches without losing your nerve? First, separate your effort from your results. Judge your week by whether you did the things that build the foundation, not by whether the numbers moved. The numbers lag, your inputs don't. Second, look for quieter signals of progress. A more specific question from your audience, a returning visitor, a slightly more confident sentence in your writing. These are signs that something is shifting, even when the visible metrics stay flat. Third, give your strategy enough time to actually compound before you judge it. Most people change direction right before the threshold, not because the strategy failed, but because they measured it on the wrong timeline. Growth rewards people who can tolerate a long, quiet middle, not people who move the fastest. If you're in a flat stretch right now, this isn't a sign that something is wrong. It's usually a sign that something is building. The staircase doesn't care how discouraged you feel while you're standing on a flat step. It only responds to what continues to accumulate underneath it. So the work isn't to force the line straight. It's to keep showing up with the same clarity and consistency, even when there's no proof yet that it's working. Because the proof almost always arrives later than you'd like, and disconnected from the moment you needed it most. Trust the staircase, not the slope. If this reframed something for you, subscribe, because this is exactly the kind of thinking I want to keep bringing you. Grounded, honest, and built for people playing a longer game. I'll see you in the next one.